Still with me, going through all of the biggest stories of the day is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. We're desperately trying to get footage of It's a Knockout for you as your theory. So if you've just tuned in, all the conspiracy theories about Kate and photographs and, the Sun front page newspaper today. Great to see you again, Kate. Royal World Exclusives first picture, which we've been greeted by people going, that's not Kate Morgan. So nothing is going to get rid of this conspiracy theories. Your theory is, though, how they end the conspiracy theories about where Kate is and her health, and et cetera, et cetera. What is your theory?
I think they've got to revisit It's a Royal Knockout. I think back in 1987, people laughed at it. Edward's brainchild, that he thought the way to get people to reconnect with the monarchy is to get them dressed in gold tunics on horseback, being chased around by Meatloaf or whatever it was. Let's ring up, let's dig up Les Dawson and get it going. I think it's the way to do it, and I'm surprised no one suggested it.
I think we're all surprised no one suggested it. This is why Tom Slater is here in the studio and he's not working at Buckingham or Kensington Palace as a palace flunky. But there we are, you probably knew that already. Anyway, let's talk about what is happening later on this evening, because it's what everybody is talking about, is it not? There's a speech tonight by the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. In the speech that she's going to talk about how if Labour get in, it's going to be a 1979 moment, echoes of Margaret Thatcher taking over, kind of a bit of a turnabout pace. It certainly isn't, you were saying earlier, a 1997 moment when there's loads of money in the bank and everything's fine. Britain is in the doldrums economically, huge debts, lots of things going wrong. But she has promised, well, she will promise in her speech, a new chapter in Britain's economic history if Labour are elected. Now, the question I'm asking our audience today is, will Labour, do you think, do a better job than the Conservatives? Tell us why you think they will. Tell us why you think they won't. You get in touch. Call 0344 499 1000. Text 87222, or you can tweet me at TalkTV. Tom, do you think that Labour will do a better job?
No. I also think...
And let's move on.
I think what's really depressing about them, yes, they are very similar. We're back to that kind of early to mid-2000s, dancing ahead of a pin.
Yeah, what are the big differences in the policies?
If you switch their rosettes around, would anyone really notice? We're back to that kind of situation. But I think if I think about some of the worst policies that the government has been pursuing, if you think about net zero, if you think about the increasingly authoritarian turn of the state and clamping down on all kinds of civil liberties and so on. If you think about the gender stuff, which, yes, this government has attempted to push back on, but still it's kind of carried on regardless. The Labour Party, whilst wanting to be very cautious, will be worse on all of those key issues.
They're insane on a lot of these issues.
Absolutely. They will try to rein in the more insane elements because they also have a better grasp of where the public is. Not particularly great, but they know that these issues upset people. But they're not going to be able to keep a lid on it. So I think on a lot of issues that we often talk about, a lot of the issues that I tend to write about and care about, they will be worse. But regardless of the fact that it's hard, that's not an argument to keep the Tories in place because they have proven themselves to be
Isn't that the fascinating thing, though? And a lot of the polling seems to bear this out, which is that, the Tories are way behind in the polls. Nobody seems to think they've got a chance in hell of winning the next election or of there being a hung parliament, that the Labour are now so far ahead of the polls. That's not what people would have said a year ago. They thought it was still a possibility. That actually there doesn't nevertheless seem to be that enthusiasm for Labour, enthusiasm for Keir Starmer, certainly. It doesn't feel like 1997 when there was, a lot of people say everyone was enthusiastic. Well, they weren't. I mean, bearing in mind John Major still got 30% of the vote in 1997. Tories would dream of 30% in the polls today. But there was much more enthusiasm, I think, on people who were voting Labour, many for the first time. Again, interestingly, a lot of people who perhaps been Labour voters who voted Margaret Thatcher and then felt that Tony Blair was, and Gordon Brown, they were safe pairs of hands. There doesn't seem to be that enthusiasm. Why not?
I think some of it will come down to kind of showmanship. I mean, in Keir Starmer, but also on the other side of the political aisle, we have an array of incredibly dull, sort of bank manager-style politicians who lack any of that kind of spark. The time is different, as we were talking about. There isn't that kind of things can only get better mood out in the country, economically.
Things have got a lot worse, yeah.
Absolutely. I think, although the similarities are also quite interesting, because I think if Labour do win, even quite handsomely at the next election, it's not really going to be on the back of enthusiasm amongst what should be their base. This was also the underlying story a lot of the New Labour years, which is the hemorrhaging of the working class vote, people turning not to voting, and then later on kind of showing up voting for UKIP, Brexit, and then the Tory party. So I think this won't... even if there is, to the extent there is enthusiasm, it won't be amongst the people who they were set up to represent.
No.
It's going to be amongst the kind of metropolitan middle class.
Perhaps starting off with low expectations would be good for Labour, because certainly I've written a column for The Sun today, just picking that up again if you want to read that online, or buy the paper. But it is that thing, the day after the general election, whoever wins, the same stuff is in the in-tray. You've got millions on waiting lists, millions on welfare, you've got massive debt, you've got the immigration issue. That doesn't go away just because Labour, in illegal and legal immigration. You've got all of the problems in the economy, low productivity, low growth. All of that is still sitting there.
Absolutely. And it's not, there's this kind of sense, maybe it's because people have got short political memories and the Tories have been in power for quite a long time, but you listen to the sort of liberal left commentariat and they've got this idea in their heads that the reason that we have all these problems is that the Tories, they're a mixture of kind of feckless and nasty. And if you just had some nice people in there, some competent people in there, someone who's worked at the DPP or has loads of degrees, but is nice, but is a nice person, everything will be sorted. It's ridiculous. And also, if you look at the Labour front bench, you cannot say it's an embarrassment of talent and experience. Yes, they've been out of government for a long time. Yeah, exactly. The first part's right. But yes, they've been out of government for a long time. But these are not people who you think are going to kind of seize the levers of power and do something fantastical with it.
Yeah.
You just think it's going to be more of the same.
But
it's
worse.
Just exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that is the feel. A lot of people get in touch with the show. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Do please get in touch. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Very quiet on the phones today. Now, often that could be because I've asked the wrong question, but I wonder if you want to get in touch about Rwanda, because how big a difference would Rwanda make to your voting? Because the Rwanda bill went back to the House of Commons. 10 amendments put in by the House of Lords over the last couple of weeks were voted back down. It's now gone back to the Lords. They're going to vote again on Wednesday. It gets ping-pong back. It's rather sort of elaborate, oldie worldy sort of world where, eventually Lords will give up and Labour and Labour, Lib Dem and other peers will give up, and the government will get their way because the Commons has supremacy. Do you think, even if a plane ever takes off with even one, just one, the channel migrant to Rwanda, even if 5,000 were taken to Rwanda, that's not going to happen. It's going to be maximum a few hundred this year, if any. Would that make a difference to Tory chances?
I don't think so. I mean, you were talking to Lord Hayward earlier about how this has taken on symbolic importance. And that's right, because there's this kind of sense of even just being able to do it.
The government should be able to do this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So it does have that symbolic importance. I think the problem is at this point it's empty symbolism. People have kind of switched off from what the government is doing. It's not even that they're kind of necessarily outraged on a day-to-day basis. They just see them as this kind of pathetic shower who can't do very much. So getting a few hundred people onto a flight, I don't think is going to be anything to move the dial.
It's not going to make the big difference. No. I do want to ask you just again briefly about the Princess of Wales. As I say, the Sun front page today. Great to see you again, Kate. This exclusive pictures along with TMZ, where Kate and William apparently walking around a farm shop near Windsor at the weekend. She's carrying a bag, he's wearing a cap, greeted by... I mean, most people have thought, well, this is the picture, this is the video. It's not just a doctored picture. It's a video. This will stop all the online conspiracy theorists who think that it's much worse for her health, or they're not together, or where is she? All of the rumours that have abounded online, which are, I mean, not just in a tiny corner of the internet, but properly everywhere, that they would be done and dusted today. No, this picture has been greeted with everyone going, that's not Kate. I'm asking our audience today, I would like to know what you think the palace should do or can do to end the speculation. You can give us a call, I say, 0344 499 1000, text 87222 or tweet at TalkTV. Tom, other than it's a knockout, which is an idea I really do like, I reckon Camilla would be good. I really like Camilla. She's apparently one of the least rated. I think she's great. Apparently this knockout probably not on the agenda. But we'll check with the palace later. What can they do to end all this speculation, or is it impossible to end it?
I think it's the latter. I wouldn't start from here. Is probably the way to put it. And I think what they've learned is if you try to kind of respond to this kind of swirl of conspiracy theories and whatnot, you just end up feeding the beast. And I think this is probably a bit of a rude awakening for the palace in terms of how they've handled this, because of the fact that they do seem quite wrong-footed when it comes to dealing with the news cycle in like the social media age and the churn of opinion and speculation. And I think it's a prompt not for them to open up more or to live stream everything or constantly try to meet where the kind of noise from social media is coming from. But just to take a step back and to realise that maybe less is more, and that you don't need to constantly be on the front foot with these things, because that's what royal family used to do quite successfully. Helps maintain that level of
Yeah,
mystique,
maybe you can do that when you don't have
but it was
24-hour news, you don't have social media, and things are very, very different.